Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are diving into a topic that honestly affects almost everyone. And I guarantee that by the end of this session, you are going to view your own mind in a completely different, incredibly empowering way. Get ready because we're unpacking the absolutely fascinating neuroscience of forgetfulness.
Right. We've literally all been there. Picture this. You're rushing to get out the door. You have exactly 2 minutes before you need to leave, and suddenly you realize the phone you just had in your hand a second ago is completely gone. You're frantically opening drawers, checking the table, digging through your bag. That visceral panic sets in. And by the time you finally find it, you're already late.
And then comes the absolute worst part, right? That crushing internal monologue. You think, why am I like this? I'm so careless. Why can't I just keep track of my own things? That self-blame, that heavy feeling of being inadequate or sloppy is almost always way more painful than actually being late. We just beat ourselves up, convinced that this is some deep character flaw.
But what if I told you that you've got it all wrong? Seriously, let's dive into this because the science tells us a completely different story. Your forgetfulness is not laziness. It is absolutely not a lack of effort. It's actually the result of an excess of simultaneous processing. Basically, a forgetful brain is often just an incredibly busy brain running countless background programs all at once.
So, to really understand why this happens, we need to look at cognitive psychology, specifically this concept called working memory. Think of working memory as your brain's temporary saving folder, kind of like the RAM on your computer. It holds immediate information, like a phone number you're about to jot down, or the next step in a recipe you're making. But just like a computer's RAM, this workspace has a very strict limit. When your brain is overloaded with thoughts, that temporary folder gets completely full. So when you put your keys down, your hand moves, your eyes see it, but because your mental RAM is maxed out, your brain simply fails to click the save button on that specific memory.
Think about how your brain is actually allocating its energy in those moments. If you're intensely focusing on preparing for a huge meeting or carrying the mental weight of some family worries, your brain directs all its high-level processing power right there. It prioritizes what it thinks is most important. As a result, routine, everyday actions, like where you just set down your keys or your umbrella, are totally pushed into the background. They blur out entirely because the brain just doesn't have the bandwidth left to record them.
Which brings us to the twist. 3 hidden brain strengths.
Because guess what? This overloaded, forgetful brain we've been talking about, it is actually packed with unique cognitive superpowers. When we stop viewing forgetfulness as just a flaw, we uncover 3 hidden strengths that are directly wired into this specific type of busy brain. First up, let's look at how society often labels this brain type as disorganized or a rule breaker, someone who just can't stick to the standard procedure. But the scientific reality is that this is the hallmark of a divergent thinker. Because your brain isn't overly fixated on rigid step-by-step rules, it's totally free to look at problems from completely different out-of-the-box angles. Where someone else sees a standard cardboard box, a divergent thinker sees crafting material or a brilliant new solution to a problem. This mind explores multiple possibilities at once, which makes it an absolute powerhouse for creative, original ideas.
The second strength totally flips the script on being easily distracted. We live in a world that glorifies multitasking. But the real truth is, the human brain is terrible at multitasking. It just rapidly switches attention, which drains your energy. People who frequently lose their belongings are often not actually bad at paying attention. Rather, they're exceptional at deep, single-task immersion. You aren't distracted, you are so profoundly focused on one specific thing that everything else just kind of fades away.
The psychological term for this deep level of single tasking is flow state. When you're deeply reading a book, working on a fascinating project, or just lost in an amazing conversation, you enter flow. You're pouring all your mental energy into that one subject, literally losing all track of time. Naturally, when 100% of your cognitive power is dialed into that state, minor details, like whether you grabbed your wallet or where you left your coffee cup, are forced completely out of your conscious awareness. So yeah, your forgetfulness is actually a side effect of your profound ability to focus deeply.
And this builds directly into our third hidden strength. You might have been called impulsive or restless in the past because you act before you think or drop everything when a new idea hits. But psychologists reframe this as being a novelty seeker. You're highly responsive to fresh ideas and new stimuli. This translates into this incredible action-oriented drive. While everyone else is overthinking themselves into paralysis, you're out there seizing opportunities and acting on inspiration the very second it arrives.
Now, this novelty-seeking drive is deeply fueled by a phenomenon called mind-wandering.
This is when your consciousness detaches from the mundane present and just rockets into exciting future plans, inner reflections, or past memories. If you're putting on your shoes but your mind is already wandering to an exciting conversation you're going to have later, you might totally forget to zip up the bag sitting right in front of you. Your focus was simply pulled to a much more compelling, action-oriented inner thought.
All right, let's move on to the blueprint. Practical systems for you.
So, here is the absolutely crucial point. Your brain isn't broken. It's just optimized for creativity, deep focus, and rapid action rather than routine administration. But obviously, you still need your keys to get into your house. So how do we manage this without all that toxic self-blame? Well, we stop telling ourselves to just try harder to remember, and instead, we build brain-friendly systems. Our first strategy is the ultimate scientific hack for a busy mind: cognitive offloading. Remember how we said your working memory has a strict limit? Cognitive offloading simply means taking the heavy lifting out of your brain and transferring it to external tools. Stop forcing your brain to remember every little detail. Let your environment do the remembering for you.
What does this actually look like in practice? It means writing things down in smartphone memos the very second you think of them. It means relying heavily on calendar apps with automated alarms. It means creating pre-made checklists for different types of outings, like a workday checklist or a gym checklist. And please, don't feel bad about doing this. Highly trained pilots and medical professionals rely obsessively on checklists precisely because human memory is inherently fallible. Externalize your memory so your brain is completely free to do what it does best: think creatively.
Next up is the 5 senses trigger. This next system is highly effective for anchoring those mundane, everyday actions that usually slip your mind. This technique is actually adapted from a really famous point-and-call system used on Japanese railways to ensure absolute safety and prevent errors by train conductors. Here is exactly how it works for your memory. Step 1. You do the action, like setting your keys down. Step 2. You physically point at the object with your finger. Step 3. You state out loud what you just did. By combining sight, physical motion, and the sound of your own voice, you're creating this robust multisensory anchor. You are literally forcing the brain to open up multiple pathways simultaneously just to record that single, mundane event.
I highly encourage you to actually try this today. When you walk in, put your keys down, point at them, and say out loud, "Keys are on the tray." It might feel a little silly the first time you do it, for sure, but this simple vocal and physical cue forces a subconscious habit into full conscious awareness. It turns a non-event into a hard-coded memory event that you can easily recall later when that moment of panic tries to creep in.
And finally, environment design.
This brings us to our final, and honestly, perhaps most powerful strategy. Instead of fighting your internal habits, we're going to change the physical space around you to perfectly complement your fast-running brain. The goal here is to create fixed, totally unmissable physical cues. Put a hook directly on the back of the front door so you physically cannot miss your keys. Place your wallet on a bright, highly visible tray right where you empty your pockets. If you need to bring something important to work tomorrow, don't leave it in the office. Place that bag literally blocking the front doorway. You're using your environment to trigger your memory naturally.
And this brings us to a golden rule for the divergent, flow-state brain. Visibility is strictly greater than aesthetics. A beautifully designed, perfectly hidden, stylish storage box might look awesome, but it is completely useless to you. If an overloaded brain can't see the item, it basically forgets the item even exists. Out of sight truly is out of mind. So prioritize keeping your crucial daily items right out in the open where they demand your visual attention.
Ultimately, all of this science points to one incredible, empowering truth: change your environment, not yourself. It is time to stop the toxic cycle of self-blame. You are not sloppy. You have a brain that is wonderfully wired for big ideas, deep focus, and rapid action. Acknowledge your unique cognitive strengths and just build the smart external systems that support your everyday needs.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a challenge. Think about your own daily routine. What is the one thing you always seem to forget or lose? And based on the science we've explored today, how will you redesign your physical environment or use a system like cognitive offloading to fix it today? Thank you so much for joining me, and I cannot wait for you to start working with your amazing brain rather than against it.